We're joined now by the communications head at the AfCFTA Secretariat, Grace Khoza. A very good day to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you very much, Desiree, and thank you for the invitation.
Ms. Khoza, you are South African but Ghana-based, working for the Secretariat. Just take us through the process of putting this mammoth task together.
First, it's been an honor because this started in 2018. If you remember, the first IATF took place in Egypt, Cairo, in 2018. And this was even before we were literally legitimized as a secretariat to start operating. When we started operating, which began officially as of this year in January, we're trading within the continent, started officially. We then came on board as part of the Secretariat's work to make sure that organizations, especially in the continent, appreciate and understand what is the objective of the Secretariat and how they can benefit as the publics.
So you speak about the objectives, 40 billion in trade investment deals expected, 5,000 conference participants, 10,000 visitors and buyers, 55 plus countries and 1,100 exhibitors. And to juxtapose that, it's just after lockdown in many countries where people were not meeting person to person. Let's take us through all these complexities.
First and foremost, we really didn't find a lot of the biggest challenges amongst the ordinary people who wanted to come and participate. I think what has been critical and very, very supportive was the governments themselves to ensure that ordinary members of the public, especially because this platform is meant for the business people, is not meant for government, even though it's a platform for engagement between government to governments and government and private sector. But really, from a regulatory point of view, governments encourage their citizens to come and participate. But importantly, eThekwini, the city that's always warm to welcome whoever wants to come to this part of South Africa to exhibit and be part of such events, extremely showed their willingness. If you remember very well, Desiree, this initiative, this platform was supposed to have taken place in Rwanda. And primarily because of COVID concerns, Rwanda then indicated that it would be unfortunate for them to continue if they would not be able to. And at the last minute, eThekwini came through. So from a regulatory point of view, board of governments, as I said, including our province, we really found that people were willing and people were ready. And when we started engaging with the private sector, those that are going to benefit, it became very clear that there's excitement in the air in Africa to reignite itself and come out of the life before COVID and start talking about business, start talking about trade that would rejuvenate the business and the economy of this continent.
When we start to talk about business at this level, we're talking about scale. And the Secretariat released a paper on the challenges to intra-African trade. And one of the things that some of the things that are mentioned are small GDPs in some of the countries and also small populations of less than 20 million. And one would think 20 million is a big number, but we're talking really big business here, aren't we?
It is. It is absolute big business. But also, as we've said, we're created to ensure that the whole world appreciate that we as the continent collectively, we are talking about a big market that nobody else has even really appreciated more than we have. If you look at our GDP ratio, we're talking about a number of between 1.3 billion. And that continent is exactly why this secretariat was created, to say collectively, this is what we represent. These are the billions of people that we represent in the continent. So yes, individually we bring a 20, we bring a 2 million, but the reality is if we want to be taken seriously, we have to do this collectively and united as the Secretariat's ultimate objective is all about.
Our viewers, mostly South African, we do go to some African countries as well, aspiring traders and business people and investors, where do they start?
Here's the part that is so beautiful about this journey, Desiree. It is that the Secretariat was created for the benefit of ordinary traders, of ordinary businesses, especially the SMMEs, including established companies. We want them first to appreciate and understand that this is for them. And when you start doing that and appreciating that, you make us accountable. The biggest responsibility of the Secretariat is to create policies that will enable governments who have rectified and signed on to this agreement and have now taken the initiative of making sure that whatever they agreed from a policy point of view is then translated into action to benefit those people in the SMMEs, established businesses, and ordinary public. So your first call of point is to make sure and encourage that your countries have rectified the agreement. Secondly, from us as the Secretariat, we are creating platforms of engagement where we're educating and informing the public. As I speak right now, just this morning, we'll be having our first session looking at women in trade. We know that the big bulk of so-called informal trading in the continent is a responsibility, a beautiful responsibility of women. And they've done it so well, and they've given it their best. In actual fact, when we were recently in Tanzania, the women in Tanzania said, you finally realize how important it is. But for us as the Secretariat, we want to bring these women into the so-called mainstream of the trading platforms that have been taking place for all these years. So please come engage us, engage those of us who are at the Secretariat, come and talk and find out. But importantly, the ministries of trade in each country are also the sole proprietors, the sole custodians of how businesses can benefit from this agreement.
Of course, there's multiple conversations, including the one you just spoke about the women in trade. Just take us through some of the highlights of that conversation. Are we encouraging women to not only be seeking opportunities, but also be creators of opportunities?
Let me surprise you, Des. The big bulk of the women in this continent have been creators. What has been missing, as I've indicated, is that link to move them from just doing their trade and their business in the informal part of the economy, but bringing them into the formal part. I'm excited as a young Black woman to say this continent has survived on that. Has survived on the shoulders of our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts. So the Secretariat is saying, through the conversation that we're creating this morning, we want to hear some of the challenges that you are facing so that when we start drafting the policies that will then be enacted by your own countries, wherever you are, they benefit you. We want to appreciate and understand the pains and the challenges that you're going through. Why you're not getting access to finance? Why is it so difficult for yourself to see your business growing? Why is it difficult, even from a regulatory point of view, to find yourself faced with punitive regulatory frameworks more than established businesses? And this is the platform that we've created for this morning. And the session is, we're going to have two wonderful women businesses in the continent who are going to narrate their own personal stories. And then we're going to listen to policymakers who are going to also participate in formulating policies that will enable this woman to participate in the mainstream economy of this continent.
Okay, we're going to let you go now, but I just want to know, just based off the conference that took place last year in Cairo, have we seen any form of growth in spite of the country lockdowns and having to deal with COVID-19? Have we seen growth in trade amongst African countries since then? Are we able to measure it?
We were wonderfully surprised by our partners, AfroSimbank, who are the main host, and we are just co-hosting with them. And as I said, a privilege and an honor to find out that a lot of those deals that were signed in Cairo, 44% of them really have been activated. They're working well, and there is a way of us measuring and monitoring their success. Not all of them have been positive successfully because of COVID, but there is a measure of contentment that those conversations that started in Cairo we can clearly see that there's been a nice build-up, and people are now forging relationships, not within regions, as it used to be the norm, but literally business partners are finding partnerships across the continent. And that's exactly what this platform has been created to achieve in the main.
There's clearly a lot to talk about, but thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this morning.
Thanks, and thank you very much to the audience.
Grace Khoza is the communications head at the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement Secretariat, based in Ghana.